The 90s was a decade full of awesome animated series, but perhaps the thing that has stuck most with us from this time period are the heroes. Iconic animated figures from who battle evil in one form or another and inspire us to better face the problems that confront us in our own lives. If you're watching this, we're going to go ahead and assume that you know who Batman is. What you might not know, however, is that Batman, the animated series, is quite possibly the best version of the character to ever exist. A perfect synthesis of over 50 years of comics that were distilled into bold animation and subtle, sophisticated stories. Almost every version of Batman is super cool and intimidating in their superhero persona, but what makes this version of the character surprisingly refreshing is that, bear with us here, he's actually a well-adjusted guy. Unlike in some portrayals of the Dark Knight, who treat their Bruce Wayne persona as an afterthought, this Batman understands the importance of work-life balance. The animated Bruce Wayne is genuinely kind and connected to those around him, a proper father figure to Robin who's not afraid to show affection to his surrogate son, and a philanthropist who does as much good for Gotham during the day as he does at night.
We come back here, have Christmas dinner, and watch It's a Wonderful Life.
You know, I've never seen that. I could never get past the title.
You might think that this more hopeful tone would take some of the punch out of these stories, but if anything, it often makes them hit even harder, increasing the dichotomy between Batman's two separate lives. For instance, when you start off by establishing that Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent are actually genuine friends who knew each other before things went bad, it makes Harvey's inevitable transformation into the villainous Two-Face even more tragic. The darkness is even darker when you contrast it with the light. So for our money, the animated series Batman is as good as the Dark Knight gets. Spacey, gluttonous, clumsy, and not that bright aren't the typical traits that most people would associate with a superhero, let alone the leader of an entire team of reincarnated soldiers with an inescapable destiny to stand against evil forces across time and space. That is, however, a description that fits Usagi Tsukino perfectly, which is why she assumed there had been some sort of mistake when a talking cat showed up to tell her she was a reincarnation of a magical superhero princess from the moon.
I was told that Sailor Moon is clumsy, stupid, lazy, and unrefined, and there's no way a girl like that could ever pass the princess seminar.
That kinda makes sense.
She wasn't alone either. The rest of her new superhero team were also pretty shocked, especially the fiery Rei Hino, who felt like she herself was far more suited to the job of team leader. However, as time went on, Usagi, in a superheroic identity of Sailor Moon, proved to the rest of her team and to herself that she could rise to any occasion, fueled by a deep burning love for her friends. That's what makes the story of Sailor Moon so compelling. In a world full of perfect supermen, it's refreshing to see someone for whom being a superhero doesn't come easily. Someone who thinks of herself as a failure. Someone who would rather just stay in bed all day and eat snacks. After all, if everyone thought that Sailor Moon wasn't capable of saving the world only for her to step up and do it anyway, maybe the rest of us can find a similar reserve of strength buried deep within ourselves. If Usagi can be Sailor Moon, we can all rise to the occasion in our own stories too. Although she started off as a side character on Beavis and Butthead, the misanthropic, bespectacled teen Daria Morgendorffer got her own spin-off in 1997. By the end of the decade, she had grown into a pop culture sensation in her own right, just as famous as her two buffoonish former co-stars. Her solo series, simply called Daria, tells the story of her family moving away from the dim duo and into the fictional town of Lawndale, where she attempts to assimilate into a new high school populated by a vast array of foolish teenagers and even more foolish adults. Because of Daria's inability to hold her tongue in the face of the fakery that surrounds her, the show's 5 seasons see her and her best friend Jane clashing with pretty much every single institution, social structure, and cultural norm that exists in high school life.
Well, my history teacher hates me because I know the answers. But there are some interesting idiots in my class.
That's great!
If you haven't watched Daria before, you're probably at least familiar with the basics of her character. A gothy, emotionless, somewhat smug sourpuss who hates everyone. If you think that's all there is to the character though, we urge you to give it a watch and discover just how much depth and nuance a character and the series have to offer. Though its roots as a Beavis and Butthead spin-off means that her show is never fully able to divorce itself from the trend of lowbrow 90s humor in which it was created, the show can be transcendent at times, with incredible and affecting character work mixed in with the comedy. Daria's philosophical monologuing is every bit as beautifully tragic as the characters who racked up critical acclaim on prestige dramas 10 years later. Not all cartoons from the 90s have aged well, especially in light of the animation renaissance of the 21st century, but somehow with each passing year, the Tick just seems to be getting better. In part, this is due to its hilarious and enigmatic lead, the Tick himself. We never get much backstory on exactly who the Tick is under his mask, or if it even is a mask, but there are 3 things about him that we can say with certainty. He dresses like a blue bug, he's nigh invulnerable, and he's completely clueless. But despite all this, he has a good heart, and he does his best to fight the good fight and stand as a role model for his anxious sidekick, Arthur. The Tick is such an appealing character that, even though his animated series was cancelled after an all-too-brief 36-episode run, he's come back in live action twice, and cemented himself as a cult favorite. After all these years, something about the Tick still resonates with us, even if we can't exactly articulate why. Maybe it's a unique combination of his selfless nature, the vast and earned confidence that comes along with his unstoppable powers, and his penchant for spouting nonsensical aphorisms. Maybe it's the fact that as superheroes have become the most popular things in the movie theaters, the Tick's sharp genre parody just gets more relevant to pop culture. Maybe it's that we all feel like Arthur from time to time and wish we had someone like the Tick in our lives to remind us of a simple truth. Even if you had no idea what's going on, you can still save the day. If only we could all have the confidence, compassion, and zest for life of the Tick. One of the roles of a superhero is to inspire people, and there are few cartoon characters who inspired young audiences during the 90s, quite like Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus.
Please let this be a normal field trip? With a Frizz? No way!
Played to perfection by Lily Tomlin, Valerie Frizzle is a 4th grade science teacher, known for her jovial attitude, adventurous spirit, and colorful wardrobe. Whenever she wants to teach her students a lesson, Frizzle takes them on a reality-building field trip around the titular shape-changing bus. Across 4 seasons, her class goes pretty much everywhere, from the farthest reaches of the solar system to the Amazon rainforest and even into the human body. Twice. And yes, it was just as gross as every kid wanted it to be, with the kids getting really panicked about where their classmates' digestive system was going to take them before they remembered that burping exists and they could leave the way they came. Aside from the gross-out factor, there's so much to love about Miss Frizzle. She's fearless, encouraging, and she always helps guide her students to discovering the solutions to problems on their own, rather than giving them all the answers, encouraging them to learn by doing rather than just lecturing them about the facts. The Frizz is a teacher we all wish we had, and it's not just because she has inexplicable magic powers. Although, if you want to go deep down the well of trying to figure out exactly what is going on with Miss Frizzle and her strange abilities, there's a fairly popular theory among Doctor Who fans that Miss Frizzle is a Time Lord, and her school bus is a TARDIS. The moody action fantasy series Gargoyles launched as Disney's take on the darker, more sophisticated storytelling style that made Batman the Animated Series such a hit was sadly never as popular as The Dark Knight. Revisiting it these days, however, shows that it stands a test of time better than most of its 90s cartoon contemporaries. The aesthetics are sharp, the world building is deep, and the work put into the characters is truly impressive by the standards of any decade. Pretty much every member of the principal cast is rock solid, some of them literally. But today, we're going to talk about the dark and tortured heart of the show, Goliath. The wise and honorable leader of the Manhattan Clan, Goliath is a winged stone warrior who was cursed to sleep for 1,000 years, along with the rest of his clan, before awakening in the modern world. Though unparalleled in battle, Goliath's big heart also means that he tends to trust people whenever he can afford to, and even sometimes when he can't. Thus, some of the more cynical denizens of our modern age, such as the amoral businessman David Xanatos, are often able to take advantage of this big lunk's good nature. As his story progresses, Goliath becomes an increasingly angry character, but those who think that he's some sort of violent brute misunderstand him. Goliath's rage also comes from his tragic idealism, his disappointment that yet another person who seemed to be his friend ended up being just another well-spoken liar. It's not often that you get to describe a cartoon character as Byronic, but Goliath certainly fits the bill. Between the enduring nostalgia for the classic toy line and cartoon, and the film franchise that hit theaters in 2006, the robots in disguise of Transformers have moved from the fringes of nerd culture firmly into the mainstream. Even though everyone knows who Megatron is these days though, the focus for all those well-publicized fond memories have always been on the original 1980s cartoon and not any of the later iterations of the franchise. And as much as we like the show, that's a shame. Transformers Beast Wars, a computer-animated 90s series to the hand-drawn original, is worthy of just as much attention, even if its looks are more than a little bit dated. Like their G1 predecessors, Beast Wars tells the story of two rival factions of robots, the Maximals and the Predacons, who crash land on an uncharted planet. In classic Transformers fashion, these two warring teams continued their fighting after taking on the appearance of the locals. But this time, they opt for animals instead of machines. The leader of the Maximals, Optimus Primal, becomes a gorilla, a disguise which fits his personality well, as he's strong, intelligent, and imposing. In his heart, though, Primal is a peaceful, troubled soul. He does his best to live up to the legacy of Optimus Prime, the legendary Autobot from whom he inherited his name, but he always feels destined to live in the shadow of the greatest Autobot who ever lived. However, Primal eventually becomes just as much of a legend in his own right. Whereas his predecessor was idealistic and traditional, Primal realizes the benefits of being practical and creative. And did we mention that he has a flying surfboard and a jetpack? Yeah, he's a robot gorilla with a jetpack. That's the kind of thing that sticks with you no matter how it's animated. Clearly, Optimus Primal deserves to be remembered as the icon he is, right alongside everyone's favorite truck dad. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about your favorite animated shows are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.